A man walks onto Brooklyn Bridge with workers behind him, ready to charge people money to cross. He says he owns it. And the terrifying part? People believed him. Welcome back to the channel. If you're into real stories that sound completely unbelievable but are 100% true, you're in the right place. And trust me, this one only gets crazier. Because the man behind this wasn't just bold. He was brilliant in the most dangerous way. His name was George C. Parker. And before we go any further, you need to understand something. Parker didn't look like a criminal. He didn't hide in the shadows. He didn't run from the law. At least, not at first. He dressed sharply, spoke elegantly, moved like a man who belonged in high society. The kind of person you'd trust without thinking twice. And that was his first weapon. Trust. Now imagine this. You've just arrived in New York City. New country. New life. Everything unfamiliar. You're chasing opportunity, stability, maybe even wealth. Then you meet a man like Parker. He speaks your language. Or at least tries to. He understands your ambition. He sees your hunger. And then he offers you something unbelievable. Ownership. Not just any ownership, but a piece of the city itself. But wait! Here's where it gets crazy. He didn't start with small scams. No, Parker went straight for icons. He would approach his victims quietly, often through introductions that seemed legitimate. Sometimes using accomplices pretending to be lawyers or officials. Then he'd lower his voice, lean in slightly, and say something that would change everything. I have a rare opportunity for you. A pause. I'm selling the Brooklyn Bridge. Now think about that for a second. Anyone else says that, you laugh. But Parker? He made it sound real. He pulled out documents, beautifully forged deeds, contracts stamped with seals that looked completely official. He didn't rush. He let the silence do the work. And slowly, doubt turned into curiosity. Curiosity turned into belief. And belief? That turned into money. Sometimes thousands of dollars. Life savings. All handed over willingly. And here's the part most people don't expect. Some victims didn't just walk away with papers. They took action. They showed up at the bridge with crews ready to take control, to install toll booths, to start collecting money. That's when reality crashed in. Police would arrive. Confusion would explode. Arguments would start. And then the truth would land like a punch to the gut. They didn't own anything. They had been completely deceived. Now here's the question that should be bothering you. How does one man pull this off more than once? Because this wasn't a one-time miracle scam. Parker repeated this again and again and again, and not just with the bridge. He sold the Statue of Liberty. He sold Madison Square Garden. He even sold the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The same landmarks, sometimes to multiple victims. So why didn't word spread faster? Why didn't people catch on? Because Parker understood something most people don't. People don't just buy opportunities. They buy dreams. And he sold them perfectly. Before we go deeper into how he built one of the most unbelievable fraud operations in history, do me a quick favor. If you're already hooked, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. It really helps the channel grow and lets me bring you more stories like this. Now, let's go deeper. Because Parker didn't just rely on fake papers. He built entire realities. He created fake offices, fake identities, fake authority. Sometimes he would rent spaces temporarily just to make his operation look legitimate. Victims would walk in, see desks, documents, people working. Everything felt real. And that's the dangerous part. Because the more real something feels, the less you question it. But here's where it takes a darker turn. Parker specifically targeted immigrants, people unfamiliar with U.S. systems, laws, and property ownership, people who were already navigating uncertainty. He saw vulnerability and turned it into opportunity. And this is where you start to see the pattern. It wasn't just about money. It was about control. Psychological control. He controlled the narrative. He controlled the environment. He controlled how people felt. Excited, privileged, lucky, like they were being let in on a secret deal. And once someone feels lucky, they stop being careful. But wait! Here's the twist that changes everything. Even with complaints, even with victims going to the police, Parker kept slipping away. For years, different names, different setups, different victims. It was like chasing a ghost. And every time authorities got close, he adapted, changed, evolved. So now the stakes are higher. The scams are bigger. And the question becomes, how long can someone keep selling the impossible before reality finally catches up? Because it will. It always does. But when it finally did, it didn't just end his scams. It exposed just how far he had gone. And what happened next? That's where the story takes a turn you don't see coming. Because when it finally caught up with George C. Parker, it didn't happen the way anyone expected. There was no dramatic chase across rooftops. No last-minute escape through a crowded street. No, it was quieter than that. And somehow, even more unsettling. Authorities had been watching him for a long time. Complaints kept piling up. Angry victims, embarrassed officials, confused reports that sounded too ridiculous to be true. Someone sold me the Brooklyn Bridge. At first, even law enforcement struggled to take these claims seriously. But the pattern became impossible to ignore. Same story, same style, same man, hiding behind different names. So they waited. They studied him. They learned how he moved, how he spoke, how he built trust so quickly. And then one day, he slipped. Not because he got careless, but because he got confident. And confidence is where con artists often fall. He approached the wrong person. Someone who didn't just listen, but questioned. Someone who didn't just believe, but verified. And just like that, the illusion cracked. He was arrested. Finally. And this time, there was no talking his way out of it. No charm strong enough. No story convincing enough. Because the evidence was overwhelming. Multiple victims, forged documents, a trail of deception stretching across years. The system had caught up, and this time it held him. He was sentenced and sent to Sing Sing, a place known for holding some of the most notorious criminals of that era. And you'd think that's where the story ends. A con man finally defeated. A cautionary tale wrapped up neatly. But wait! Here's where it gets even crazier. Prison didn't change him. It didn't break him. If anything, it made him a legend. Inside those walls, Parker became something else entirely. Not just an inmate, but a storyteller, a performer. Other prisoners, and even guards, were fascinated by him. They wanted to hear the stories. How did you do it? How did people believe you? And Parker? He told them everything, with pride, with precision, with that same confidence that fooled so many before. He would reenact his scams, describe his tactics, even laugh about the moments his victims showed up ready to take control of landmarks that were never theirs. And here's the part that really makes you think. He didn't see himself as a criminal, not in the way others did. In his mind, he was smarter than the system, smarter than his victims. A man who simply understood human nature better than anyone else. And maybe that's what makes this story so unsettling. Because Parker didn't rely on force. He didn't threaten. He didn't steal in the traditional sense. He convinced. He persuaded. He made people want to give him their money. And that's a different kind of power. A more dangerous one. Now here's something you need to sit with. The phrase, "I've got a bridge to sell you." It didn't come from nowhere. It came from him. From this exact story. A warning disguised as a joke. A reminder of how easily belief can override logic. But let's bring this back to you for a second. Because it's easy to look at these victims and think, I would never fall for that. But Parker didn't target stupidity. He targeted hope, ambition, the desire to get ahead. And those things, they haven't changed. Not then, not now. Which brings us to the real question. If someone like Parker existed today, with modern tools, the internet, social media, how much bigger could his scams be? How many more people could he reach? And would we even see it coming? Before we wrap this up, if this story made you pause, even for a second, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment with your thoughts. Do you think you would have believed him? Be honest, because the answer might surprise you. Now, there's one final piece to this story, and it's subtle but powerful. George C. Parker died in prison. Not rich, not free, but remembered not for violence, not for destruction, but for deception so bold it became history. And that's the twist. He lost everything in the end. But his story? It never disappeared. It became a lesson, a warning, a symbol of just how far confidence and manipulation can go. So next time you hear an offer that sounds too good to be true, pause, look closer, ask questions, because somewhere in some form, there's always another Parker waiting. If you made it this far, I appreciate you. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, and share it with someone who needs to hear this story. And remember, not every deal is what it seems. I'll see you in the next one.